Welcome to 'Cause We're Nerds, the podcast that covers trends and new releases in comics, movies, video games, board games, and much more. I'm your host, Caleb, and with me is my cousin, Zach.
Oh yeah.
2019 is upon us, and we're celebrating with our month-long Level Up series. Today, we're looking at open world gaming. Has it started to stifle variety? Is there too much or not enough of it? And how does it compare to other formats? Find out on this week's episode of 'Cause We're Nerds.
Grand Theft Auto, Mass Effect, Fallout, Legend of Zelda, Assassin's Creed, Red Dead Redemption, Dead Island, Final Fantasy, No Man's Sky, Sea of Thieves, Minecraft, Just Cause, Dragon Age, Fable, EVE Online, Watch Dogs, Far Cry, The Witcher, Elder Scrolls, World of Warcraft, and much more.
Oh, wow. That was impressive.
Yeah, I read a lot of articles before we decided to podcast, so I just jotted down basically all the all the different open world video games people said were pretty much pinnacles of this theme or design, as you will.
Yeah, I gotcha. How you been doing, man? We haven't talked in a while. How was your New Year's?
Oh, my New Year's was rad. It was epic. What did I get? What nerd stuff can I brag about? Guess you'll have to wait to what you've been up to.
Ooh, okay.
So stay to the end of the podcast, folks. Please.
Oh, before we get too far, I do want to say thank you to Taylor Poole for that awesome 8-bit rendition of our opening theme song that Zach did not hear.
Nope. I'm not.
It's pretty awesome. It wasn't done in time to put on our last episode, but I just re-uploaded the last episode, so it's on there now.
No.
So, like, all the ones for this month are going to have, like, the 8-bit theme.
Yeah. Well, unlike a pleb, I listened to that episode the moment it came out instead of waiting a week to listen to it. So that is why.
That's right. Speaking of waiting, Zach, did you see the trailer for the final season of Game of Thrones?
I have not. I haven't watched the final previous season of Game of Thrones. The final season of previously shown Game of Thrones season 7, 8.
Tisk, tisk, tisk.
So there's still a lot that this man doesn't know. So do not spoil it.
Okay.
But I do know that when you're talking about Game of Thrones, anything is possible because Game of Thrones is literally an open world.
Ooh, look at that. So today we are talking about open world in gaming. So
That's right, game design.
Game design, yeah. If you're not familiar with it, it's basically like, so think of a game like Mario where, it's pretty linear. You go from point A to point B. An open world game is where you have a wide open area. The size of that kind of depends on who you ask. And you can kind of go about and do things in different orders or do things that aren't necessarily like the main story.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up depends on who you ask, Caleb, because you said Mario's point A to point B. Well, the side-scrolling Mario, yes, but many actually consider the N64 Mario open world, right? So, like,
yeah, definitely.
Where do you draw that line? I have a definition that I totally came up with by myself and didn't steal from Wikipedia, which says, and it has a great definition. Open world is a virtual world in which a player can explore and approach objectives freely as opposed to a forced linear gameplay. And I thought that's just kind of what we'd maybe use to loosely define open world. But when we get into the the dirty, nitty gritty details of open world, there's actually not really a fine line. I found it's more of a very fuzzy gray line as to what is an open world and what's not.
Yeah, it definitely is. And these are games like Grand Theft Auto, like that's a really popular one you could think of, or World of Warcraft. It's an MMO, but it's also open world. You can go do things in however you want, right? And so this has really started taking over gaming in the last 10 years, but probably maybe even more so in the past
10, 15.
6, I think has really gotten a lot more, you think?
You're going the other direction. I'm going even deeper.
Well, I mean...
Yeah, I know what you mean. I would agree, yes. More and more AAA games are going towards an open world theme, right? I mean, you look at what are games that are coming out. You have Cyberpunk, you have of course now I'm blanking on it, but like previous games like like the Assassin's Creed games, Red Dead Redemption 2, Zero Horizon Dawn,
Anthem.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. I was thinking of Anthem that is not out yet, but that will be coming out. Sea of Thieves came out not too long ago, right? So all these games that have been coming out and now previously or will be released in the future are really trying to push that open world theme.
Yeah, like think all the new Tomb Raiders open world,
Yes.
anything like that. And so it's permeated, and I have some thoughts on it. But before we get to that, I thought maybe we could kind of talk about where it's come from as far as our perspectives. I was trying to think back, and the oldest one I could think of off the top of my head is the original Legend of Zelda.
Nice. Okay, Caleb, I'm glad you said that. I did some research on the history of open world. Did you realize there is literally no consensus on what the first open world game is? Like
Yeah.
every article, everything points at a different center point as starting that open world theme. However, most articles will state Legend of Zelda somewhere in there. So like Game Informer, IGN, GameSpot, and The Escapist, actually all four of those pointed to the Legend of Zelda as being probably the first open world, if not the first prominent open world video game.
Yeah, and I did just a tiny bit of research, more cursory stuff. A lot of the stuff that I was reading was saying that it kind of came out of like the text-based games where you would just type in, do this or do that. You could kind of do whatever, which evolved into more like Ultima, if you know what that is.
Sure.
Which that game ultimately inspired, it's either Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest. I can't remember which one.
It's Dragon Quest, I think.
Dragon Quest. Okay. So, that game was inspired by things like Dungeons and Dragons, right? And so it's kind of that lineage of tabletop or text-based where you can kind of do whatever you want and bringing it in. And like you said, that line's really blurred. I think that's why it's hard to pin down a single one, but definitely Legend of Zelda would have been one that most people are familiar with now. I don't know, like at the time, probably not.
Yeah, but I mean, moving forward, like that list of games I listed, you can pretty much see the stepping stones to open world. Legend of Zelda, was the first because like there was this other world you could explore, and you could kind of choose your own path as far as like where you were going. But the next kind of biggest one that I found out, it'd be interesting to see if you agree with this, Caleb, was Grand Theft Auto, the franchise, and particularly Grand Theft Auto 3. Is seen as like one of like a big improvement in that open world theme. Now you did have some previous ones like Mario N64, but like as far as the advancement, GTA 3 was huge.
Yeah, I think GTA 3 is the blueprint of what we think about now, but I do think there's some in the middle because that's a pretty big gap. That's like a 20-year gap almost between Legend of Zelda and GTA 3.
So you're telling me we didn't go from grabbing swords and swinging in bushes to, well, it's Grand Theft Auto, so grabbing swords and swinging in bushes, if you know what I mean.
Hey yo,
got him.
Yeah, I mean, like I think Mario 64 definitely revolutionized, if not open world, what a 3D game is, and I think that while 3D is not a requirement for open world, it has kind of become the de facto format for open world.
Agreed. Yes,
and I think that without Mario 64. It wouldn't be the same type of open world games we have. But definitely GTA 3 set that groundwork and probably the framework for like what everything is after that.
Yeah, I mean, and there's been some franchises that have really saturated the market with their content for open world. We talked about WoW. Now that is a little bit different, but I still think that I still think that, would qualify as an open world. But specifically, if you just think the Elder Scrolls or Assassin's Creed franchise, either of those, basically all of them are open world.
Yeah, or also Mass Effect. That's another big one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, kind of moving past that, Caleb, I was trying to think, has there been any other leaps and bounds in open world gaming other than kind of the standard that's set and then what's been kind of added on and perfected? And the only thing I could think of was actually No Man's Sky. And say what you want about that terrible game, but I think that kind of progressed open world gaming forward.
It's weird because if you look at like GTA 3, which I haven't actually played, but I know through osmosis and the internet, and you look at open world games now, they're not all that different. Really, what they've become is they've taken little pieces and little mechanics from other genres and brought them in. Like crafting is a really big thing in open world games now. And I don't think that started in open world gaming. It started in, I know it was really big in The Last of Us, which I would not classify as open world. It's kind of like it's a linear story, but the areas are kind of more open. So that's kind of like in the middle. And it's taken things like that and brought them in. But in terms of like a revolution like GTA 3 was, I don't really know if we've had one. I think the No Man's Sky thing you're talking about, are you just talking about like the scale of it and how...
It's more, it's the scale of it and that it's procedurally generated. So like it's even beyond what you could expect from any of these other video games.
Kind of, I guess. I mean, Mass Effect has that planet exploration in it. They're not auto-generated the way that they are in No Man's Sky, so there is like a definitive limit. So... I don't know if I could call that like a revolution or just another thing that's been tacked on that makes it a little bit different.
Sure, no, that makes sense. And that's, again, where that gray line comes in. So, like, open world, going back to the definition, we said, okay, you could explore and approach objectives freely versus linear gameplay, but that still doesn't really define it. So, for example, Caleb, you said your first open world video game was probably Legend of Zelda. I was trying to think about my first open world video game. It for sure was Dungeon Siege on the computer, because you could explore this world and complete different objectives. And that's what really defines an open world, is you can explore it, and B, there's side quests over the main quest. So you can at least go after the main quest several different ways.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first video games I remember playing or watching my dad play is Myst. Now, are you familiar with that game?
Yeah, it's like a puzzle game.
Yeah, right. It's a puzzle game. Now, I was wrestling with, is that considered open world? Because on one hand, there's a vast space you can explore. You have different puzzles you can solve, and from what I can remember, maybe not in at least Myst, but in the sequels, you can solve different puzzles unchronologically. However, there's just one objective. It's to find pages and put them in a book, and that is it. There's no other side objective, no other thing you can do. So, like, would you consider Myst an open world video game?
Yeah, I would. I don't think that an open world game has to have other objectives. I think that it just allows you, it doesn't force you to go forward, right? Like a lot of games force you to move forward. And when I said Legend of Zelda, that's not the first one I played. And I've never played the original. It's just the first one I could think of. But talking about this specifically, one of the first ones I did play, because I was trying to think of what it was, would have been Pokemon.
And I was humming the Spider-Man theme. I was like, all right, it's Spider-Man 2. Here we go.
Actually, that's the other one I have written down right below.
There you go, yeah.
I think I played Pokemon just a tiny bit earlier, though.
Sure.
But yeah, Pokemon's kind of that same thing. I mean, yeah, you can collect all the Pokemon, but the main goal is to get the gym badges and to go to the end. But you can go off and do other things without progressing that story, and I would still consider Pokemon open world.
Sure. So when I was trying to write down then some open world video games that I'm kind of currently playing versus some linear games that I literally just either got done with or have currently played, the linear games that I put down would be Doom, as in like the relaunch of Doom, and then Wolfenstein. And I'm, again, the relaunch of Wolfenstein.
Right.
So like Old Blood and all that stuff. Because those are pretty linear. You're on a track. You can't really explore outside of the track. You can go backwards. And you can explore kind of that area, but it's very linear. It's kill the Nazis or kill the monsters and go on to like the next thing. And that's about it. You can't run outside the castle. You can't run outside, go explore Mars and Doom or any of that stuff, versus other two games that I'm currently playing, Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Prey, and both of those where you can definitely go after different objectives, explore the spaceship or Greece, and do whatever.
Yeah, definitely. And anything that's like level based, kind of like Doom is, I would say is almost always going to be a linear game. I don't know how you do a level-based game that's not. I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking back to, what's it called? Dark Forces, which is kind of like an original Doom clone, which is level-based, but you also have a massive open area. So it's kind of, another mix where you can go around and do things and there's a objective, but it's not like a start at the beginning, go to point B type thing. It's a little bit more like a puzzle as well.
Sure, but I still feel like games where there are levels can't be defined as open world. Because, I mean, you know, linear games, you have ones that are strictly railroading you and ones where there is some exploration, but it's still a railroad.
Oh, yeah.
Versus I feel like what defines an open world is that you can literally go and play the game for hours without completing the main objective and still be doing other objectives or at least moving the plot forward somehow.
Yeah.
Or your character development. I shouldn't say plot, character development.
Or doing other fun things that you can do, right?
Yes.
So, like, a good example of another really big popular one a couple years ago, Final Fantasy 15 was a complete departure from what that series had done before. And the other ones had been open world, but this one went open world Western style, which is what a lot of the games we've been talking about are. And it's
Red Dead Redemption 2.
Literally Western style.
Literally.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we think. But one thing that I've kind of grown concerned about is with this advent of all of these open world games, which for a long time was really cool. I mean, like you mentioned, Spider-Man 2 was just a couple years after GTA 3. It was one of the earlier open world games, and it was amazing. But a lot of the games that come out today, most of the AAA games that are coming out are all open world, and I'm worried that it's forcing us to lose the variety in gaming. Because like we've said, a lot of the things that have come out in the last 15 years are mostly the same with just different little elements tacked on.
Yeah, no. That's definitely true. I mean, I think that's one of the disadvantages of open world gaming is that you can say it's a trend. In fact, Caleb, would you like to jump into maybe the like what is good, what is bad, disadvantages, advantages of each, either an open versus a linear game?
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right, so I mean, let's start with open gaming since obviously that's what we've been talking about, and let's just jump into those. Why maybe an open world gaming is bad, and I agree with you. It has some disadvantages, and one of those is that it's a trend, and trends will die off? Question mark.
Yeah, I mean, trends come and go, and trends aren't necessarily a bad thing either. I think one thing that has been a problem with open world gaming currently, and in the past definitely like 5 years, is it seems like developers just want to force whatever game they're trying to make into an open world setting, when an open world setting doesn't necessarily fit the game they're trying to make.
Yes.
And that's a really big problem at the core. Like, let's take, for example, Spider-Man. Does Spider-Man have to be open world? No. But he is a traversal character, which means he moves a great distance very quickly. He kind of fits more of an open world style of game. Take something like
Candy Crush. Does it deserve open world? Maybe.
Candy Crush, the game.
Side note, as we're talking about video games, Caleb, do you know what video game makes the most amount of money in 2018?
Oh, it's probably a stupid mobile game.
Candy Crush. Candy
Really?
Crush beat Fortnite by at least $1 to $500 million.
That just makes me really sad.
Yep, Candy Crush made $1.5 billion in 2018, and about $1 billion of those dollars came from the original Candy Crush saga, which is like the original one. Not even like all their spin-offs they've had.
Yeah, it's all those in-game purchases, I think.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. So I was trying to think of a game, and Tomb Raider. I think Tomb Raider does not work as an open world game. I think that the joy of Tomb Raider is going through the tombs, and when you put it in this open world and half the game is out in the jungle, that doesn't work as well. It doesn't feel as good. And they put that into an open world. It was different for the series. It was new. Maybe it's good for a one-time thing, but they kept doing it. And those are the types of things that I think are very, very problematic in the current state of gaming.
Sure. I mean, I think along with that too, that ties along with your point, I think a huge disadvantage to open world is development issues is because it's so massive. Is a lot of time different development issues are either A, put on the back burner to tackle later and they never are, or B, it's just the propensity to have bugs and different glitches increases because of this open world, right? You can look at Assassin's Creed. Oh, I'm blanking on it. We'll call it Assassin's Creed England. Or was it French? No, it's France. I don't know. Do you know what I'm talking about? Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, that's
Man, if you're a listener, shout out your radio right now.
What's it called? Hold on. I think I have it on my computer because it came free.
Okay, as Caleb's searching for that, I'll tell you about it. I mean, but when that was released, I think it was France, and the England one did have some issues, but not as bad as the one in France. But when the Assassin's Creed was released, I mean, it was just terrible. The images that you would see of people's
Unity.
Yes, Assassin's Creed Unity, of people's faces like distorted and mess ups happening as well. We've seen a lot of that with the new Fallout game, Fallout 76.
Oh yeah,
is that it's people have found ways. Like, okay, one guy I was reading an article has found a way to become invincible. Like he literally cannot die in the game.
I saw that.
And it's not fun for him at all because he wants to die. And so he had emailed developers asking to kill his character, and they sent back that they wouldn't. So he's doomed to wander the wasteland and never die, which has just completely ruined the game for him.
And that game's got other stuff on it as well, because that's also an MMO, which even further exacerbates the stuff you're talking about. But definitely, when you take a game and you make it open world, I don't know if people understand how much more work that is, not only from just crafting the landscape, but making sure that your physics system is not going to clash with the world that you have created. I know there's been some complaints with Red Dead, where people will be riding their horse and they'll just hit a tiny rock and the horse will go flying and it'll kill them because the physics system is not jiving. And debugging that and figuring out that balance is so difficult and time consuming when you take what would be a small playable area and you make it this massive map.
Yeah, or for example, the weather changes and your balls, the horse's balls don't change. And
what?
Yep. You said it, boys. You said it. So Red Dead Redemption, I don't know if you heard, Red Dead Redemption had like part of their marketing campaign, one of it was that it was so in depth that when the weather changes, the size of the balls on the horse will change. So when it gets cold, it shrinks. Not even lying.
Oh,
so there's glitches with that.
I feel so sorry for that developer that had to do that.
Man, think about that. Like, man, it took us 5 years to make this game. Ed, what did you do? Man, I got to work on these amazing landscapes. Phil, what did you do? I worked on gun physics. Spencer, what did you do? Horse's balls for the last 5 years. That's it.
Yeah, and that's a really great point, too. Think about all the open world games that have come out. They have long development cycles because it's so much work.
Yeah, and not only long development cycles, another issue with open world games are that they're simply very, very long. If you're looking for a shorter game, I mean, Doom and Wolfenstein are great. Those games that have levels, because you can play a level, you can beat it in maybe like 30 minutes or whatever time frame it takes you, and you're done with that level, right? And then the whole game's just going to take you maybe 16 hours, 12 hours, depending on the difficulty, but it's not a long drawn out game. Now switch that to an open world game and you can be playing Red Dead, Fallout, Spider-Man for 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours of gameplay if you were trying to complete all the minor objectives, complete all the unlocks, and do everything you possibly can. And then once you do that, you can continue to play it. So it's really a time pit and a commitment.
Yeah, but on the flip side of that, that can also be a really good thing. If you're looking for a long game, if you're looking to make a big investment in a game, open world games are where it's at. The linear games just do not have the same amount of time because they are a very tailored experience and you can't do as many variations or things like that in those. So those end much quicker. So if you're looking for an epic tale, if you're looking for something the scale of Lord of the Rings, that is really tailored to open world gaming.
Exactly. It's two sides of the same coin. Very long on one end, but hours of gameplay on the other.
Yeah, I think that open world works really well for any adventure style story. Like I was saying, kind of like Lord of the Rings. Any large sprawling thing, anything where you're a character that can move very quickly. Like if they were to make a Flash game, like the superhero The Flash, I would expect that to be open world because you can move so quickly. I don't know how something like that could be contained to such a small area. I also think that open world works really, really well for a mysterious game, something where you're hiding things throughout the world and you have to find them, or things where there's secrets in a game. All of that stuff I think works really, really well for open world.
Yeah, for most games, open world can work very well if done correctly, right? I mean, there's a lot of advantage to it. You have control, so you feel more like that character, more like you're in control of the character, not like you're, following a storyline. There's exploration elements to it, so if you like to explore and traverse passes on your own, it's great for that. And there's a lot, like you just stated, Caleb, depth. There is more depth to the gameplay because you can find out more about the world you're exploring, more about the world you're in, more about the depth of your character. I mean, kind of go back to our D&D podcast when we talked about how as a dungeon master, the worst thing you can do is railroad somebody. Well, a linear game is railroading you in that game. It's telling you have to do this, and this is the only way to do that, versus an open world game where you can go about that many different ways and can choose which kind of path your character wants to take.
Yeah, and definitely. And I also think that you really hit another major point right there, is that story-wise, open world games can be fine. They can have great stories, but it's much easier for a linear game to have a fantastic story, because when we think of story is something that starts at point A, ends at point B. It is linear. Stories aren't typically anything that's not linear. And so when you take a game and you make it open world and you split it up, that's more of a lore. That's more of world building. It is called a open world for a reason. But story-wise, linear games, and we've seen this a lot lately. Think of games like Detroit Become Human. Think of games like Uncharted that are very cinematic, very hailed for their stories, because it is a linear game and that helps them. Yes, you're restricting it a little bit, but that's the focus of those games, and they do it really, really well.
Did you just say Just Cause is a linear game?
Did I say Just Cause?
Yes.
So I meant Uncharted. I'm sorry.
Okay. I was like, in that case, let me redo this opening here.
No, sorry. I meant the Uncharted series.
But I will say, I think a negative to open world games is that the side quests usually are all the same side quests. And I don't mean in the game itself. Like, in the game itself, they're very, very different. I mean, like, open world versus open world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're playing a Lord of the Rings game, one of your side quests is, hey, go kill that guy and take his treasure. If you're playing Mass Effect, hey, go kill that guy and take his treasure. Skyrim, hey, go kill that guy and take his treasure, right? It's always, go kill somebody else and take his treasure. Go explore another place. Go do something for somebody, and upgrade yourself, right? And so
there's like six basic types.
There's like 6 basic types, right? And those types are going to be the same no matter if you're playing Red Dead Redemption, a Western video game, or if you're in space with Mass Effect, or you're in post-apocalyptic America and Fallout. They're going to kind of be the same type of side quests.
Yeah, and it depends on how much work the developer wants to put into those in terms of how different they feel, right? So like playing Final Fantasy 15, several of them felt identical. There were a few that felt very different, though. And while I haven't played it, I've heard that the Witcher side quest, The Witcher 3, they're fantastic. Like, they are all very different. They feel different, but that's very hard to do, again, in open world, because if you've got, 500 square miles of stuff, and you want to have something every 3 miles, that's a lot of quests to come up with.
Mass Effect, can I bang every one of my crew members?
That's not exactly how that goes.
Okay, it's not a side quest, but it's part of the open world that you literally can do.
No, not in the first one. Not in the first one.
You sure?
Positive. I played it just a few years ago. Anyway, this is not important.
No, it is not important. Okay, well, Caleb, we've been talking about open world games. Going to like linear games, what would you say are maybe the shortcomings when it comes to those type of games?
So the shortcomings of these are kind of like the benefits of open world. It's kind of like, the two sides of the coin, where these it's hard to have like an epic scale, like a long story, but you can have a very intense, intimate story in them. I think that one of the great benefits of a linear game is you're able to have a much more tailored experience for the player versus something like an open world where you have to build a sandbox and just let them do what they want.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're, like you said, the disadvantages are kind of the flip side, and that stays the same for the advantages as well. And when it comes to these linear games, Caleb, you just mentioned this, but like it's simple, it's not taxing, and it doesn't take hours on end. And so, like, I don't know about you, but there are games that I have played that are open world that I simply didn't finish. Fallout 4 is one of them. I know how it ends. And it was a great game. I just didn't have time, and I was trying to do all the different side quests, and I just lost focus of the main quest. And when I tried to go back to it, I didn't really remember what was going on in the main quest, and so I just decided to move on to another video game.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another big problem, which can be handled with the game design depending on how the developers decide to incentivize those side quests or the length of the main story they decide to take. It really just depends. Most of them, you're right, they have a lot of side quests that aren't very much fun, and if you try to go complete them, it's just a time sink. But one probably, aside from the story, probably the biggest benefit to a non-open world game that I can see is because you are confined in a much smaller box in terms of what you can do, there is much more freedom with unique gameplay mechanics and unique new ideas that you can do in a linear game that you can't do in open world. For example, there's a game, I can't remember the name of it. It's kind of like a platformer, but the gimmick was you change gravity. And I'm not talking about Gravity Rush. This is a 2D game where you basically like hop to the ceiling and then you go through some stuff and you have to hop back and forth and control the gravity, which wouldn't work as well in that style of gameplay as in a open world environment. I think that you can also do very unique things with the combat or with the health or anything like that.
Or with the art, Beautiful Joe. There you go.
Definitely, Beautiful Joe is another one. I mean, The Last of Us is very tense. There's a lot of unique things that you happen in that because it's tailored. You know that you're going to have to come through this hall, and so you know that at this time, this one thing's going to fall and it's going to scare the player. Uncharted, same thing. You know that the player has to come down this massive falling tower, so you're going to have this quick time event, which is more story focused. But on the flip side of that, you might have this small area with a really complex puzzle, which might be a lot harder to do in an open world game because of the physics engines.
Yeah, I think with a linear game, you can have more focus and it can feel more complete. But I think you also have to be aware that can still stay the same for open world games. Like, so for example, I'm playing a game right now, Prey. It was like this kind of secret hit of 2016. It is a fantastic game if you haven't played it. It's like what Dead Space should have been. And so you're trapped in this place. It's in outer space, and there's aliens who are trying to take over. And anyways, you find out. I mean, it's very, very focused on the storyline, and so I have all these minor objectives I can complete, but the minor objectives actually reveal stuff more about the situation that has caused whatever to happen on this station, as well as like my character itself. So for example, like I have a recording from my character previously, and he's like, and this is the main objective, he's like, oh, do this, and then the side objective appears, and I get another recording from my same character previously who says, actually, I want you to do this. So it's like, okay, which is telling the truth? Because now I can go either direction. I don't have to follow the main one, right? So, and it adds more depth, which you couldn't get in a linear game.
Yeah, definitely. And And none of the things that we're saying are always 100% of the time true.
No.
They're generalities. I mean, you'll always find a game that bucks the trend. And I'm not saying like either one is worse than the other or better than the other. I like linear games and I like open world games just the same. I think that one of the problems has been because open world gaming was so revolutionary in the way it was done after GTA 3 came out, the public really responds to that type of game, which in turn I think forces developers to develop games that way because they think that that's what's going to bring them the big paycheck or get them through the next 3 years. Because I don't know if you know this, Zach, but games typically, when they're in development, they go into the red. And
oh, yeah.
The goal is make money when it comes out so you can survive for the next 3 years and make up the money you just lost, so that you can develop your next game. It's a very tough, what's the word? Area of work to work in.
Industry, maybe?
There you go. Industry. It's a really tough industry to work in because of that type of thing. And I think that people's want for open world and their kind of blind devotion to it has led developers that way. But I do actually think that we're starting to see a shift. I've noticed a lot more games that are not open world kind of be popular. And I think that's good. I think you need a balance, perfectly balanced, as everything should be.
As everything should be. I'm glad you brought that up, Caleb. I feel like we've probably been bashing maybe open world more than crediting it with anything during this podcast. But really, open world revolutionized the game industry and is definitely fantastic. When it comes to open world versus linear, I don't think there's a winner, and I don't think there can be, because when you look at those two games, they're just so vastly different, and it's going to depend on the what you're in the mood for and the type of gamer. Some gamers who are listening to this, you probably can't speak today. Prefer linear games, right? And other gamers are going to prefer open games. As far as myself, I like a mix, like you just said, Caleb. I had played Wolfenstein, like that was my latest game I played, loved it. And then I'm switching to Prey, which was a linear game, and now I switched to Prey, which is an open world game, and love that as well. I love both types of games. They're both fantastic, and they both work really well.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess one of the last like big points I want to make is that in my personal opinion, I think that the games industry has gotten in some ways a little bit lazy. Of course, there's always those big games that come out and buck the trend, but in some ways a little bit lazy with the open world gimmick. And that's why I'm having some issues. A few years ago, my problem with this was that every single game was a first person shooter. Like all the big games are FPS and you couldn't come up with anything else. Platformers weren't around. Well, platformers have now made a comeback. They're doing stuff. Retro games are coming back with all the remasters. Everything's cyclical, but I think that the open world game industry is just a little bit too big. I think maybe shrink down, have more of a balance, have more variety. That's the big takeaway is we need variety. We need open world games. We need linear games. We need fighting games. We need puzzle games. We need racing games. We need kart racing games. All these different things we need. And it
Except Fortnite. We don't need Fortnite.
Fortnite's okay. Let those people have what they want. We all need these different things. But, don't force all of them into the open world format.
Agreed. Yeah.
I guess
having variety is key.
Yeah, and there's only so many times we can say that.
There's a space for everyone at the video game table, except Minecraft, Candy Crush.
Zach, you can't even stop. Just
racing
just
games,
get out.
soccer
get out.
games.
You can't diss Minecraft like that.
Battlefield 5. And everything else that sucks.
I'm leaving.
That's it. No, just kidding.
Do you not like Minecraft?
No, it's fine. It's all fine. Steve's fine. Steve's my best man.
Tisk, Zach. There's a lot of tisking this year.
It's a lot
week.
of tisking, but that's okay. But that's that, but we would actually love to hear your thoughts on what you prefer, open world versus linear.
Also, some of your favorite games in each. One of my favorite open world games, obviously, Skyrim was great, and that's a lot of people. But what about linear? Tell us both. We want to know, and maybe we'll bring it back up if we get some good answers.
And if not, then we've gotten probably zero answers, or the worst answers you could believe.
Yeah, and that's your fault.
And that's
we're
all
putting
on you,
this
okay?
on you.
We're done. We're not working anymore. It's your turn. Put some
yeah.
effort into this.
But that was that, and this is this. It's time for what you've been up to. So, Zach, since you have had lots of time away doing all kinds of fun Christmas and New Year's things, what have you been up to?
Before we begin, Caleb, I feel like we need a little jingle to go along with what you've been up to. Here is my idea. What you been up to?
You know, I've been trying.
Feel free to use that in other episodes if you want.
I've been trying for months now to actually get someone to make a jingle for me. And I had a guy lined up, and he was going to do it, and then he just never did.
Taylor Poole, you have betrayed us for the last time.
No, that wasn't Taylor.
Okay.
No, that was not Taylor. I wasn't going to ask Taylor because we've asked a lot of him, and I didn't want to just keep asking him for stuff.
That's what he's good for, though.
Yeah,
just asking him for favors, man. Just asking.
I also wanted something with lyrics that said "What you've been up to," and I don't know if he sings like that or not.
You're not good enough for us, Taylor. We're done. This relationship that we've had is over.
But he just made the awesome 8-bit intro.
Taylor, you're the best.
8-bit.
Everybody visit his website. All right, so what have I been up to? Well, I talked a lot about that video game that I've been playing, Prey. Highly recommend it. I think you can get it for like $20 to $25. PS4 and Xbox, and,
Is it a
computer as well.
A horror game?
Yes and no. I don't find it as... If you're familiar with Dead Space, that really pushed like, hey, this is a sci-fi horror. I don't find Prey as horrific as that. Yes, it still has... I mean, it's still kind of meant to be a little scary. And the fact that, like, people are murdered on the space station and what happened.
This looks very scary.
Yeah, no, but here's the thing, right? So, like, Dead Space was a survival, which means the amount of resources you got were very limited.
Right.
Prey is not like... The resources you have are very substantial. And it's really just like, what I love about it is it's more of a mystery. Is I still don't know what happened, and it throws so many red herrings and curveballs your way that like within the opening 2 minutes, there is a massive curveball that's thrown your way, which you're like, oh, I see where this is going, and then you're like, what? Like, what just happened? But it makes sense in the storyline. So like from that get go, like the game hooked me, and it's just a phenomenal game. So highly recommend it. Prey.
I think the real question is, though, why is the main character wearing a Mysterio fishbowl?
Can I say because he's Asian?
Yes.
I don't know. I guess that's just their space helmets. I guess they're better than astronaut helmets.
It looks really weird if you haven't seen it. It's like a fishbowl, but it's not smooth. It's like fractaled. Like it's made up of
it's
triangles.
The game takes place in an alternate timeline. Like apparently instead of the I haven't read all the documents just because I don't like reading so I'm playing a video game. But from what I've skimmed in the numerous amount of documents and books you find is that something along the lines of JFK was never assassinated, and then the Cold War never happened, and him and the Russians actually joined together for the space race, and then like decided to like they got really far advanced and decided just to stop, and then private companies, kind of like what's happening now, like with Elon Musk and SpaceX, picked up where they left off and then really like went to town.
Wait, is your main character actually Asian?
Yes.
Oh, I found a picture of him. I thought you were kidding.
Yeah, no. Your main character, I believe it's Morgan Yu. Yeah, he is. And then you have
okay, then no, you can't say that.
Oh, but okay.
Too late.
Done.
You're going to go to jail now.
I would say edit it out, but I know you won't. You're
crucified in the court of public opinion.
Okay, the other thing I've been up to then, talking about public opinion. Actually, I don't know anything about public opinion on this one, but Zach's opinion is on Batman Volume 3. So that's the current issues. that's been running since 2016, and it is with Tom King. It's Tom King's run. Yeah.
Some comics, finally, on a comic-based podcast.
That's you would think. So I'm a Marvel guy, so I have been reading like the Avengers. I recommend that. It's okay. It's not like amazing, the current Avengers run, but it's okay. I read Daredevil. I can't remember who the writer was, but it was like his last, it was the death of Daredevil, was like his last issues. That was, again, okay as well. There's a curveball in there, which is okay. I decided, I was like, okay, these are fine. And so I wanted to read some Batman. Now, as a reader who has not read Batman extensively, but has read him more on Justice League or somewhat smaller individual issues, his run, Tom King's run after issue 50, I just started issue 50, has been phenomenal. Now, for those who are not aware, I'm going to go ahead and spoil it because issue 50 has been long gone. Black Cat and Batman were supposed to be married. They were going to get married.
Oh, yeah, I heard about this.
Yeah, spoiler alert. They do not. Black Cat leaves Batman at the altar. And so the next kind of, there's a couple, there's Cold Days, Beasts of Burden, the Tyrant Wing, and that kind of spans 51 all the way up to 60. Then there's another kind of arc that's not finished yet, Nightmare 60 to 62. They are all excellent because Batman's kind of reeling from this, so it's all about his identity. So in the first 3 issues, 51 through 53, it's about how Bruce Wayne is on trial for Batman versus Mr. Freeze. So so it's like, does that make sense?
No.
So okay, so there's a court case about how is Mr. Freeze guilty. Batman basically goes and like beats the crap out of him. But Mr. Freeze says like he's not guilty of the crimes he was accused of committing. And so there's a jury to decide it, and Bruce Wayne is on that jury. So it's really interesting.
Oh.
Like, yeah, it's
that's not legal.
It's Batman. He does whatever he wants. It's really, and then like the story arc after that, Beasts of Burden, is another character, and all I'll say is Batman has Nightwing. Like Nightwing kind of comes back to help Batman from this loss, and something kind of like huge happens. Like it's like, again, I'm talking about those curveballs. It's a huge curveball, and then in the Tyrant Wing, the last story arc that just happened, something else just like through like out of left field happened, and the only thing I will mention is Flashpoint Paradox, and it's just like it's been amazing. So, definitely, highly recommend it. I haven't read a lot of them before 50. I did read 50, but if I would start by reading the Cold Days, 51 through 53, and then just continue on from there.
Nice. That sounds really good. I haven't been reading as many comics as I should have. I'm still pretty far behind.
Yeah, well, that's what I've been up to. Caleb, what you been up to?
Well, speaking of reading, I have been reading something other than comics.
No, we don't need to hear this. No. No. Your tentacle magna, whatever magna, magenta.
It might help if you can pronounce it correctly. Funny, it actually probably does have tentacles in it.
No!
It's a novel. So, it's called Spider-Man: The Venom Factor.
Ooh.
And so I don't think I've talked about this on the show before. I have like a secret thing for old school Marvel novels.
Okay.
They stopped doing them for a long time, but in like the 90s and early 2000s especially, they published a lot of novels. And I read a couple a few years ago, and several years ago now, and it's just hooked me to them. And so I've been going on like a buying spree recently.
Nice.
I'll go to used bookstores, and whenever I can find them, I'll pick them up. In fact, I just went this week and I found like 6 new ones. Not just Spider-Man, I've got all kinds. I've got X-Men ones, I've got Captain America, Fantastic Four. There's a lot of them. And so I started a new one yesterday. I'm not very far in. Just read the prologue, really. But it is called Spider-Man: The Venom Factor by Diane Duane, I think is the author. It looks to be okay. The prologue was a little iffy because it was set in a submarine, and there was lots of naval talk that I had no idea what was going on.
Now, Caleb, for somebody who, to the audience and to myself, I strictly know superheroes from either comics or movies, so very, very visual. How does that translate into a novel where it's just words on a page, man? Words on a page.
So I think it really depends on the author. I have not read enough to have read a bad one. So, I probably will soon, but I can tell you that for the good authors, it is still fantastic. The one that I read first that really caught me is called Spider-Man, Return of the Sinister Six by Adam Troy Castro, I think is his name. That's actually book 2. I didn't know it at the time. That's book 2 of a trilogy. I have book 3. I don't have the first one. I have never seen it. I'm trying to find it without having to order it. But he is able to convey it fantastically. Like, he'll talk about, Spider-Man doing the somersaults or acrobatics or backflips or whatever. In fact, that book I think is far superior to a lot of the Spider-Man comic books I have read.
Got him.
In my life.
Far superior?
That's right. I totally did that on purpose. And that's fantastic. If you're going to try to read a Spider-Man novel, read that one. It doesn't matter that it's the second one. You'll pick it up just fine. It'll all make sense. Very, very well done. So yeah, check that out. And then,
all right. What's the name of that one more time?
That's a Spider. Hold on. Let me turn around to make sure I'm telling you right. Sorry. No, it was Spider-Man Revenge of the Sinister Six, by Adam Troy Castro.
There we go. Revenge of the Sinister Six. By the way, we're video chatting, and when Caleb did that, he really just pulled down his pants and mooned me. There was no book behind him. There was no reason for him to do that.
Well,
he did.
Sharing is caring.
It can be fun. Oh no.
There's no video, by the way.
There's no video.
Let's see. I did 2 other things this past week, kind of. One, I finished Detroit Become Human, which is why I brought it up so many times.
Yes.
Fresh on my mind. You don't have a PS4, right?
No, I'm not a pleb.
That's right. So you can't play this awesome game. This is fantastic. It's a game with truly branching storylines. A lot of games say they have them, and they don't really. A lot of the decisions you make in this game really affect the outcome. I'm not going to say exactly what my outcome was because I don't want to spoil it for you guys.
And it's kind of like iRobot, right?
Kind of. It's similar to iRobot. It's similar to Westworld. It's similar to any of those androids or kind of people-ish type games.
Sure.
I don't want to give away the main conceit. I might talk about this a little bit next week with Jacob because he has finished the game. We might do a spoiler section where I talk about the ending.
That'd be fun to compare each other's endings.
Yeah, we talked. Oh
no!
Oh no! Did you do that on purpose?
No, I didn't actually, but
sounds just like you. It was really, really good. If you have a PlayStation 4, I highly suggest you go out and buy it. I picked mine up during Black Friday, so I got it for like $20.
Yeah,
it's probably not $20
$15.99. Here we go.
But definitely check it out. And then the last thing is something I meant to bring up last week, and I completely forgot because I had about a million things that I did last week. I watched Black Mirror Bandersnatch.
Oh, okay, yes. So I have watched all of the episodes except that one. I haven't done it yet. What did you think, and how did the choose your own choice mechanic work?
Okay, so I've watched the first 2 or 3 seasons. I think the first 3 seasons of Black Mirror. I haven't caught up on all the stuff that the Netflix ones that they've done since they've gotten it. So this one, I was like really curious. When I first heard what it was, I was like, no, that's stupid. I mean, choose your own adventure. I read the books when I was little. I've done some stuff like that. Not really cool. Going through it though, excuse me. I really enjoyed it. I've listened to some people that really didn't like it and thought it was really dumb.
Yeah.
I thought it was incredibly impressive. So in a lot of stuff like this, the choices are, do you want to dye your hair black or do you want to dye your hair blue? And it doesn't really make any, difference. There are some of those types of decisions in this game. However, there are a lot of decisions that really change the outcome. I was very surprised how seamless it is. So in a lot of things like this I've done before, something will happen and the screen will pause until you make a decision. And then whatever you pressed, it'll play the next thing. This one is different to where something will be said and then the little thing at the bottom will pop up to make your decision. The movie continues to play, and when you make your decision, the timer still goes down. When the timer runs out, the movie continues with the choice you made. So it never stops.
Nice.
So it's really fluid like that. There is kind of a pattern to how that works. You'll notice if you watch it enough. But it's really good. You can, basically the way it works is if you make a wrong decision, sometimes it'll end the game, or like you'll get 2 more decisions and then it'll end, I called it a game, the movie. And if that happens, you can go back and try different paths.
Like can you click like back, and then you're fine? Or do you have to restart the whole thing over again?
No, you don't have to restart the whole thing. It takes you back to, it depends. It'll either take you back to a specific point it chooses, or you can kind of choose where, depending on what you've done. But where it really gets interesting is like when you do that, it'll show you like a montage cut of the choices you've already made. So just kind of to refresh your memory, but it's really quick. But sometimes, depending on the choices you've made that led to that ending, that ended your movie, it will change things in your flashback.
Wow.
So it knows that you've picked these things and you're still seeing the same choices you've made, but with variations on them depending on what happened. There is one option. So I went through this multiple times. I went through one end and I went back and I did another end. I got almost all the endings. I think there's one major one I didn't get, but I watched it online. One of them gets incredibly meta, and it really, really sold me on the concept. They play a little bit with the fact that, well, I don't want to say. They play with the format a little bit, and I think that is a big surprise when it happens. And it really made me go, okay, this is something only Black Mirror could do.
Now my question is, how do they host this on Netflix? Like, I'm just surprised it's all contained in one video versus like you can't like search and just find all these different clips.
Yeah, the way it's presented is just like a regular movie. You click it. There are some things that it's not supported on because it's interactive. Like I couldn't watch it on my Apple TV. I had to use my PlayStation to do it.
Sure.
You can do it on your computer. You can do it on most things. But it's just the way they've got it stored. It looks like one movie.
Nice. Well, I'm definitely sold, and I will probably have to watch it as well.
Yeah, definitely check it out and let me know what you thought. And we can talk endings and what you got, because there's some crazy stuff that happens.
Talking about crazy stuff, I mean, I know you guys already talked a little bit about Bird Box, but Caleb, should we try the Bird Box Challenge?
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Oh, so Netflix has had to tweet out, please do not complete the Bird Box Challenge, because idiots, it's kind of like the Tide Pod Challenge, but just different, have decided that, like the movie Bird Box, they will go throughout their day completely blindfolded. So, in fact, I just was reading a story online of a teen crashing her vehicle. I can't remember which state she was in, but because she decided to, drive blindfolded like they do in the movie.
I don't know what would possess you to think that's a good idea.
Yep, so you kind of go throughout your day, right? So, like, the moment you wake up, you blindfold yourself. So, like, taking a shower, trying to cook a meal, trying to drive, trying to work, all the fun stuff you do blindfolded. So, Twitter has, basically said, please don't kill people. Please don't.
That just opens you up to slipping and hurting yourself, burning yourself, cutting yourself, walking out into the road, running over other people. How do you even work blindfolded?
I don't know, but let's be honest. We basically go blindfolded into this podcast. Can I get a got 'em?
No.
Just kidding.
I was close. But I made the choice not to.
Well, I will snatch your bunder camp.
Anyway, we do want to say thank you to Taylor Poole.
Yes, thank you
for our traditional opening and this awesome.
Or do we? We never decided on that.
All right, well, I'll give you the option.
Oh, Taylor Poole, we might possibly thank you in the future, but maybe not. You'll have to wait and see.
For our awesome music. Also, check out our friends over at the CNC Power Hour, where they stream Magic the Gathering. Wait! Oh, most people probably tuned out at this point. I forgot my special announcement. Oh man, I meant to say it at the very beginning, and I completely forgot. I have a special announcement, Zach.
Did you want to save it to the... Okay, two options. You can save it for next week's episode, or you can continue on and let the last few listeners who are still listening know.
No, this will be a reward for making it to the end.
Nice. Guys, listen up. This is your reward. And gals.
So, my special announcement is that I will be flying out to California at the end of the month and attending a special tribute event for Stan Lee.
What?
Mm-hmm. So, this event, what it's going to be, you might have heard about it online. I don't know how much it got around, but basically there is going to be like a gallery of his work beforehand. This is at the Chinese Theater in LA, a very famous spot. This is where Star Wars first premiered.
Iron Man 3.
Mm-hmm. A lot of different things have been there. And then we'll go inside. Kevin Smith is hosting, and there will be a massive panel discussion with people there. Mark Hamill is supposed to be there.
Wow.
There's going to be Stan's favorite music is going to be performed, poetry, stuff like that. So I will be there. My goal is to take as many pictures as I can and post them to the 'Cause We're Nerds Instagram to try to share it with everybody. This might not sound like a big deal to some of you. This is a massive deal to me. This is probably the only time I'm ever going to be able to do anything like this, be at an event with a red carpet. And it really it's for Stan. And, you know, Stan passed last year, and that was a really big deal to me. So I want to be there and kind of recognize his life. And also it's just, I mean, it's cool. It's cool that they're doing this. The proceeds are going to charity, for comic book artists to help them when they're, like when they have giant medical issues and they can't pay their bills or stuff like that, you know. So it's really cool. Hopefully it'll be a great time. I spent enough money trying to get there.
Well, make sure you plug this podcast, not because it's world famous, which it is, but because of your amazing Stan Lee episode, people need to definitely know about that one.
Yeah. So I'll see what I can do. But the reason I remembered is because BlizzCon, Chris from the CNC Power Hour, is going with us.
There we go.
So, anyway, do check out his show, CNC Power Hour, over on Twitch, where they stream Magic the Gathering and video games throughout the week.
Wow!
And also, our website, where you can find all of our episodes. I didn't know if you were going to say that part.
I was going to say, as you've been waiting for me to take control. Nope.
He chose not to.
I chose to be silent.
Our Stan Lee episode is on there. Go check it out if you haven't. You can also find last week's episode where we talked about VR. And next week, you can find our episode about the Super Mario Brothers. Please.
It's me, Mario.
It's a me, Luigi, Mario's little brother that no one likes.
It's me, Waluigi.
Wario.
Why am I not in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate? Wah! And is Luigi really dead? Question mark.
Da-da-da-da.
Find out this stuff. Just come back.
Thanks for listening to 'Cause We're Nerds. Stay up to date with all the nerdy news and podcast drops by following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also leave us comments and feedback at cuzwerenerds@gmail.com. That's CUZWERENERDS@gmail.com. And as always, if you enjoyed this podcast, which we know you did, we would love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or Facebook or any place that you can find the podcast. Next week, wrapping up our month-long Level Up celebration, we're taking a look at the notorious Super Mario Bros. Live-action movie. Why was it made? What went wrong? And is it really as bad as its reputation implies? Find out next week on 'Cause We're Nerds. And they said together, Stay nerdy.
Human listener, here is your choice. A. Leave a 5-star review on iTunes. B. Caleb and Zach will both die. Choose. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Choice was made. Successfully. The end. All right, I'm stopping it.